Good morning, brothers and sisters. Today's topic is Rachel is weeping for her children. Quite the sad statement, and you're probably remembering right away the prophet Jeremiah prophesying about the time when Jesus was born, and then the fulfillment took place in the New Testament, and the Gospels are talking about that. Matthew specifically underlines that it was fulfilled, the prophecy of Jeremiah, where he says that, Rachel is weeping for her children. Now, all that took place in Bethlehem, as you all know, and it's a sad story. Some children who were innocent had to be killed, especially boys. It was boys mainly. We don't know if there was any girls were killed. It was specifically boys were targeted. It's a sad story. It's a really sad story when you listen to it, and when you see that, and when you try to imagine it. Imagine you hold your baby, and then half an hour later, or an hour later, or 5 minutes later, your baby was killed. I mean, brutally killed, right? There was a lot of crying, a lot of weeping. But what can you do? Those were the times back in the days. And it was prophetically foretold. But I want to take you all back to Genesis, because I believe the origin, as well as the writer underlines this in the book, comes from the book Genesis. When we look at Joseph specifically, you kind of see him emerging and becoming the main character towards the end of the book of Genesis. His beginning is very humble. He was for a while the youngest child of Jacob's family, or of Israel's family at the time, and he was the last one that was born in Mesopotamia, and they were coming out with his 10 brothers and 1 sister, and his mother and his father's wives, and a whole bunch of servants and sheep and whatever they had. They left the place where they lived and the place where he was born, the place that he was familiar with, and then they were going back to the birthplace of his father Jacob. And lots of interesting things happened there to them. But you see that Joseph probably, I am imagining, was the favorite child. The youngest, there is a different approach towards the youngest child. There's lots of wisdom that his father already accumulated on how to treat his children, on how to love on the children. And so Joseph was the center of that love. Everything was given to him. Plus, he was the child of his favorite wife. See, Jacob never had the idea of marrying many women. He wanted to marry Rachel, and that was it. But life isn't always the way, turning out the way you want to turn out, and so it's basically he ended up having 4 wives. And so you see Joseph being in this environment, growing up in this environment where there was, where he had a lot of attention. At the same time, he had to figure out where he fits in. What was his role in this environment? And the writer of the book says that he assumes that Joseph was around 6 years old at the time when they came to Canaan. And after all the trouble that Jacob went through, his mother, certainly probably somewhere around that time, they found out that his mother was pregnant. And there was a time when his father told everybody, we're going to Bethel and we will sacrifice to the Lord. And before they went there, they had to get rid of all their idols, all of the things that were hindering them from having a relationship with the Lord. And obviously it was impactful, because I'm sure he saw the family being kind of torn, where the father was speaking of a relationship with God, but everybody else, including his own mother, had idols. And there was a shift that took place in the family where the father announced, okay guys, no more idols. No more praying to other gods. We're breaking this off. And the way we do it, we dig a hole and we will bury all that junk right here and then. and then from here we will move on and we will live a life for God. So Joseph, as a child growing up in this environment, realized that there is a real God who speaks. There is a God who answers prayer. There is a God who guides them. There is a God who speaks to them. And seeing all of this dynamic and the shift in the family, he was really making a decision where he wants to be. But what ended up happening was, when they ventured from Bethel and they left the place, along the way he knew already that his mother was pregnant, and then she went into labor, and this labor didn't turn out too well for her, so she died. She did have a son, and his name was Benjamin. And Joseph, being the only child, was left without mother and with a brother and his father, and so he was very much about the father's business. You can see that Joseph was very clingy to his dad. He knew this is all he had left, and the old man just loved Joseph. He loved him being around. He loved that Joseph wanted to be in connection with the father, with his father. And through all this, you see Joseph becoming the person he was. It's interesting that he started seeing dreams through all this, because when you have a relationship with godly people, you become supernatural in all your ways as you go. And so Joseph is quite unique, and you can see that even though he went through a lot of grief, a lot of pain, and a lot of misunderstanding, his life was all about the Lord, and God turned it all for the good. As I was reading the story in the book, my personal take on it, I was honestly quite sad. I thought about it. I put myself into his shoes. Being a child, losing your mother, crying, who would comfort him? Who would take away the grief? Only God can. And you see that Joseph later on never complained. He never once lifted up his hand and said, God, you did this to me, or any of that kind of stuff. No. He was trusting the Lord in all his ways. He was following God. He was loving the Lord, and he forgave people, he loved people, and he served people. So I'm taking example from that, and my wish for us all today is that we will take that to heart and think about it and see and pray to the Lord, saying, Lord, you've blessed Joseph in all his ways, in everything he did. You can bless me. Despite the things that I'm going through, whatever I'm going through, you can get me through it all. So that's my wish for you all today. I wanted to wish you all a blessed day. May you all be strong in the Lord. It doesn't matter what you're going through. There is always a way out of your situation. With God, all things are possible. I love you all, and have a wonderful day.